Heart with Illinois WorkNet. We are going to be starting our presentation on creating a business plan in just a moment. If you have just joined us, if you would like to take a moment to answer the poll questions on the screen, we can know who is in our audience. There are files in the lower left-hand corner. If you have problems hearing, there is a phone number that you can dial into in the middle of the bottom screen. And if you have any questions during the course of the presentation, you are welcome to type them into the Q&A pod, and we will get those answered for you. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to move us to the presentation itself. Last chance to answer those poll questions. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Today we're going to be talking about creating your business plan. When will you know if you are successful if you don't have a plan? I remember I've always heard create a plan and work your plan, and that's how you get moving. And so today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about a business plan, and those are the items on the left-hand side. We're going to cover each item briefly. This is just an overview, so do not think that this is comprehensive, because talking about creating an entire business plan could take hours, right, Sybil?
Yes, and every business plan is going to be unique because your business is unique.
Exactly. So today we have Sybil Egge, who is the director of the Illinois Small Business Development Center located at Elgin Community College, and her contact information is on there. And Sybil has spoken for us before, and I really appreciate her coming on again today to talk about the business plans, because she is just a wealth of knowledge. And she has been a director for the Illinois SBDC at ECC, love those acronyms, since 2011. So Sybil knows what she's talking about to help you create your business plan. So I'm going to turn this over to Sybil and let her talk to you going forward now.
Okay, so can I move the screen forward to the
in the lower left-hand corner of the PowerPoint pod.
Perfect.
There you go.
Okay. So a lot of people are hesitant to do a business plan because they think it's pretty onerous. And my feeling about a business plan is it's onerous if you do it the way they used to do it in the olden days. And I don't want any of my clients writing 35-page business plans. If you do that, chances are we're going into too much detail or there's too much fluff. So my idea about a business plan is let's target the most important piece of information about your business, and let's get that into a plan as concisely but as meaningfully as possible. So if you do a business plan, you will be able to clarify a lot of things that if you don't take the time to think through it, you will be surprised. And I don't want you to be surprised. It's going to provide a very comprehensive and credible financial projections for you. And my business plans that I recommend are typically 36-month plans. So when should you prepare one? As I say at the very bottom of the screen, any time is a good time to prepare a business plan, and I truly mean that. But from a conventional point of view, you should certainly think about doing one before you start a business of your own invention, because you don't really have a blueprint for that business if you're inventing it. So we need to kind of get a blueprint of what that business will be. You should also do a business plan when you buy an existing business or a franchise. If you're looking at a franchise, the good news is that the franchisor will give you some very good information, and you'll have an easier time preparing the business. Another excellent time to do that business plan is when you realize it's time to expand your current business, whether it's increasing staff or you're going to introduce a new product or service, you're going to have a second location, you're going to use a new distribution channel, or anything that is different from what you've been doing before. As I walk through the contents of a business plan, I'm hoping that you'll see that it's important to explore various aspects of the business to make sure you don't go forward and say, well, I just need $50,000 to make this happen, and then you're into the activities for the expansion, for example, and realize you need 150,000 and not just 50. So this is all about making sure you're prepared. So you actually almost always need a business plan if you're going to borrow money from a bank. There are a few situations where it may not be required, but let's assume that you need one. And it's also imperative to have a business plan if you think you need to go to investors. They're going to want a slightly different view. They're more interested in profitability. Banks are interested in cash flow. But that's really just a matter of what the financial projections are. Everything else about the plan is probably pretty much the same. So I believe it's very critical to create a vision of where you're going and how to get there. I always quote this thing from Alice in Wonderland, where she's walking through the forest and she meets a Cheshire cat who's sitting on top of a mushroom, and asks which path should she follow, and he says, any path will do if you don't know where you're going. So I don't want you to fall into that trap. You should know where you're going. Any questions so far?
I don't see any yet, so please continue.
Okay. Another great benefit that you're going to get from doing the business plan is you're going to appreciate a budget process. I find that the majority of small business owners do not budget, and they often get themselves into financial problems, cash flow problems, late in paying taxes, or or they've accumulated a lot of credit card bills. You really need to think about, how am I going to spend my money, and manage it properly so that you don't get into trouble. You will also be able to determine the right funding level for running your business or for any planned expansion. So when you go to a bank and say, I'm looking for $50,000, you can prove that that is exactly what you need. Also, in my vision of a business plan, you will observe all areas of your business, not just the one that you think needs attention. So maybe you think you need to add staff, and that's all you have to do. And I would force you to think about sales, marketing, finance, administrative, technology, et cetera, because if you don't think of the business holistically, there's a good chance you'll miss a piece. And then for those who are not very involved in paying a lot of attention to their financials, which is just about everybody, when you go through the process of doing a business plan, you will actually develop some great experience and knowledge about financials so that you can use them as a tool. You will learn what a profit and loss is, what a cash flow is, and a balance sheet. So I thought I would put this slide in here just to suggest to people that there are different ways to grow a business. It's not always at other location. It could be things like adding a new product or expanding your physical territory. So these are just ideas and things for you to think about. So when should you grow a business? Growth is good if it's controlled, efficient, and managed. So if you're running around with your head chopped off, that's not a good time to grow your business. You need to get your house in order first, eliminate the chaos, the daily fire drills, get everything calm and in place. then you can plan effectively for growth. Here are some basic questions that I've heard bankers talk about. This is basically what they need to know if you go in and ask for money. Who are you? Where are you located? What are your plans moving ahead? How are you going to get there? How am I going to make it? How am I going to sell it? We're talking about your product or your service. And how are you going to pay for it? So those are very key things for the banking community. So let's look at what's in a business plan. Okay. You need an executive summary. However, if you're doing this plan just for yourself, you can skip the executive summary. But never skip it if your intention is to give it to others for review. I once heard a banker say they really just read the executive summary and then move very quickly to look at the financials. They are so expert at understanding what the financials are telling them that they see the story within the financials. But for the rest of us who are not experts in finances necessarily, you would do, again, the executive summary if it's appropriate. Then you would give us a business overview. And Dee was showing you something in the top right. I don't know if she's going to bring that in. I have run a business plan contest in the past year, and I came up with a version of what I think is a good business plan, and it provides all the instructions that you need. So
we'll show it at the end, Sybil.
Pardon?
We'll show it at the end.
Okay, great. One of the things that I said I don't want it to be a 35-page, difficult to write document. When it's that intimidating, people don't do the plan. So we've got to take away those things that make it intimidating and concentrate on helping you understand how your business will grow or change because of the planning that you're doing. So describe your business as it is, and then tell us what your goals are for the next 36 months. And by goals, they should be pretty high level. They should be stated the following way. By month 12, increase revenues by some percentage over last year. Okay, that's just an example. But it had two very important things in there. One, it gave me a month by which you hope to meet that goal, and then it described a financial-oriented goal that can be measured, okay? So if your goal is to increase profitability by 5% this year over last year, it's going to be very, very measurable, okay? So I think it is worthwhile to have between 3 and 6 goals for a 36-month period. If you have more than 6, the goals are too narrow. If you have less than 3, you're not expansive enough in your thinking, okay? Background information. I've heard from some bankers that they really feel it's critical that if you're going to start a business, you better understand that business. So a lot of people, for example, might be interested in starting a restaurant. It seems to be a very popular thing. And maybe they want to start it because somebody has said, man, your food is great, you really should be making it. But you have no experience running a restaurant, you've never ran anything but a personal kitchen, and you don't have anybody on staff who's been involved in a restaurant. Well, if you go that route, and you will probably be doomed to failure within a year. You really need to understand what it takes to operate a business in the particular industry you're falling into. Then I ask you to tell me, but tell me about your business. What makes you unique? How do you fit within this industry? Okay, then moving on, one of the things that you have to think about is, well, how am I organizing? So there's this business structure that every business, every legitimate business should have. You're either a corporation of some form, like Subchapter S or a SCorp, or you're a limited liability company, or you're a sole proprietor, or you're a partnership, or some flavor of those, okay? So I just want you to tell me in one paragraph, what is the business structure you have selected for your business? Who are the members? Who are the board of directors? That sort of thing. Who owns shares in the business? Then the next paragraph is, well, tell me a little bit about the management team. Sometimes a business is very small, and you alone are the management team, and that's okay. And you can say, I founded the business, and I am the only manager at this time, and I don't plan to have any additional managers within the 36-month plan. Now, there may be other personnel that you have, and now you tell me, not necessarily by name, I'm more interested in position, okay? I might have to have an administrative assistant. I might need to have a salesperson. I might need to have a stocking clerk, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to ask you to identify those positions by title, and then tell me whether they're full-time or part-time, and how much you would pay. Either if it's a salary, what's the annual salary going to be, or if it's hourly, tell me what the hourly wage would be. And if it's hourly, then you need to tell me, well, how many hours a week is this person likely to work? Now, why do I ask you that? I ask you that because you're going to have to project what your payroll costs will be. And you can't do that unless you've figured out every position, how many hours they're going to work, and how much money you're going to pay them per hour. All right, then we go on to the operational area. Operations means the part of the business that makes whatever it is that you sell, okay? So what are the key activities that you might have in a business? And this happens to be all businesses have the same key activities: sales, marketing, HR, financials, I always forget this, customer service, administrative, and I'm forgetting, strategic planning, and I'm forgetting one thing. But it's in the document that we're going to show you later on. And I want you to think about, again, all of these major activities that all businesses have to perform in some way or another, and indicate in there how that is going to be managed. So you, for example, could say, for finances, I'm outsourcing my bookkeeping and my tax preparation to a CPA firm, and that's perfectly legitimate. Or you may say that I'm outsourcing marketing because I'm not good at marketing and I have enough money to pay somebody to help me with that. And you might say sales, but I'm a retail operation, so I really don't have dedicated sales staff like I might if I were a business to business. So anyway, you go through that exercise of trying to identify who's responsible for these major activities. Then we ask the question, do you have inventory? If you do, how are you managing it? This is very, very important. A lot of people have too much inventory or not enough inventory, and it's you have to have exactly the right balance. So I want to know how you've thought about handling that. Supplier arrangements would be for somebody who is producing product let's say you are manufacturing mattresses, and you are actually starting with raw materials. So do you have arrangements with suppliers who are providing the raw materials that you use to make your mattresses? What is the arrangement? What kind of terms have you got? AR arrangements is what terms do you have with your customers to pay you? Now, sometimes a lot of businesses are cash only. And by cash only, I mean they either get cash, they get checks, or they get credit cards. Those are all classified as cash. Other arrangements might be if you do business with another business, you may say, okay, I'll ship that product, but you have to pay me for that product within 15 days. Okay? So that means you're going to give them terms, and you have an expectation that they will remit what is owed to them by a particular point in time.
So we've got a question from the audience. Do you have to name or list exact companies or firms?
No.
When you're okay.
No. We just want to know if it's your intention to have terms with your customers. I'm really trying to get people to identify I'm a cash-only business, or I'm going to be distributing invoices, and therefore I am going to experience a lag between the time I send them the product or provide the service and the time I get paid. It's important to know that from a cash flow point of view. Okay. The next one is risk management. And I see Laura's question. Let me answer that now. There is software available for inventory management. There's inventory functionality available through QuickBooks, and then there are other capabilities. It depends how significant your inventory is. If you have hundreds of thousands of pieces, you certainly need something very adequate to keep track of all of those pieces. Risk management is primarily about insurance. What kind of liability insurance do I have to protect myself? Do I have fire insurance? But there could be other mitigating things that you need to put in place to make sure that you are managing risk, and that would be the place you would identify it in the plan. The last thing I like people to talk about is, are there any compliance issues? So if you need special certification within the state or within the community you live in, you would state it there. This is, for example, another way to remember what are expenses and that I may incur during the year. So, for example, chiropractors need to get some sort of recertification, I think, every 2 years. So, but that's going to cost them a pretty penny when they have to do it. So wouldn't that be nice to know? So that gets into the projections. Is this where you would mention nonprofit status if that is the business? I guess
I would think you would mention that with the type of business that you are.
Yeah, but here's the deal, and here's my limited knowledge of about non-for-profit businesses. By definition, the Small Business Administration says that any small business that uses the word small business is by definition for profit. Okay, there are special considerations for non-for-profit businesses, 501(c)(3)s. The SBDC does not deal with those things, so I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to give you any good information, but there are definitely some very special requirements related to reporting finances, to requiring executive boards to oversee the business. So, Dee, do you have more experience in that?
All I know is that they have to have their 501c3 status to qualify, and then things change. But that's all I know.
What I've actually helped a couple of people with the business plan, even though their intention was to be a 501c. And I said, look, I can help you with the marketing and all of that other stuff. I just can't help you with the very specialized accounting issues that you're going to have to face. So that's the best I can help you with now. Lori, did you get your question answered about your inventory for your hats?
I wrote her a suggestion out so that
Okay,
it's
good.
shared.
Thank you. Marketing plan. Okay, this is critical. If there are two areas that small businesses fall down on, it's finance and marketing. And that's because we tend to know what it is that we're selling. We know how to make it, we know how to deliver the service, but we don't necessarily know how to market it, and we don't necessarily know how to manage the finances. I have included a pretty comprehensive marketing plan in my templates. I want you to tell me what it is you're selling, not in detail. You could put that in the appendix. You know, like if you were doing a restaurant, put the menu in the appendix. But you would put at this point in the plan something like, well, we serve lunch and breakfast and dinner. We also serve alcohol. And then you could say the average price per breakfast or lunch or dinner is, and you put that number in there. And then you'd say, my cost is, and you put that number in there, so that I can see what it's going to cost you to make the product that you're going to be serving and how you're going to price it. Now, of course, if it's a service, you're not going to have any cost figure there. You're just going to tell us how the price you're going to use to sell it. So I want categories of what it is that you're selling. Then I want to have a market analysis that includes a value proposition. A lot of people don't quite get what I mean by value proposition. What is the value or the benefit of what you sell to your customer? So this is, why would your customer buy from you? Then we talk about market segmentation. Again, this is an area that a lot of people don't get. You might have a product that anybody would buy, or a very large portion of the population could buy. Underwear. Everybody needs underwear, at least we hope they do. And then, but you may be selling a particular type of underwear. First of all, it might be ladies' underwear. And then you can sell very, very pricey types of underwear, or something that's a little bit more practical. So the price varies tremendously. So you need to then say, of the total population in the world here, I'm selling to women of a particular age who have a particular median income, for example. So I can really target to whom I'm selling. Now, you may have multiple lines, and maybe you have, therefore, two different segments within a market, in which case you would define both of them. We go on next to say, well, where does that segment of the population live? They could live in your physical community, or they could live any place in the world, which is always hard, because people who buy on the internet are buying strictly for the lowest price. They're not buying for necessarily quality. They're not buying necessarily for service. They want the lowest price. So if it is a physical business, for example, you sell ice cream, you would say your primary market is kids. And so you want to know how many families live within, let's say, a 5 or 7 mile radius of your ice cream shop because that's your primary place where you're going to sell to. So you would say, how many people in my target segment live around here, so what's my expectation of being able to sell to them? Then we have a place for international trade in case you have a product that would be available overseas. David, let's see, I'm having a difficult time getting a standard business plan written, but I have, let's see.
Read that a one-page business plan is okay for funding. Is this correct?
Not really. One-page business plans are a bit of a rage right now, and I believe that they're most effective for helping people who have a product that they're inventing. So you are really trying to find out if your idea is going to play well in the market. I would not take a one-page business plan to a bank. They're going to want to see some financials. Okay, competition is who's playing in your neighborhood? Who do you meet who is selling products that are exactly like yours or very similar to yours? Now, you may have a lot of competition, but I would like you to focus on maybe the top 3 to 6 who are playing in your area and where you're really butting heads. And you want to say why they are competing. Are they competing with you on price? Or is it quality? Tell me a little bit about how they might compare to you. Then we want to know product and service placement. That is, what channels are you using to sell your product? If you're selling a service, you only have one channel. You're delivering it yourself, or you're having your staff deliver that service. But if you're selling a product, let's say clothing, you might have a retail shop. You may also be selling it over the internet. That's what I mean by product placement. Then we have marketing objectives and tactics. So if you are selling to millennials versus selling to baby boomers, your approach is going to be very different because those two segments of society use different means to find out about things to buy. So this is where I want you to be thoughtful about your market and try to appeal to them in the way, you've got to meet them where they are. Where do they read or learn about products they might want? Here you would have a list of the tactics. So you might say, I'm going to do social media, I'm going to distribute flyers, I'm going to have a website, I might buy AdWords, things of that sort. So do you need a list of names about your competition? I think you do. Especially if it's physical, where you're setting up like a store, who in your area are you going to butt heads with one-on-one? Okay. Okay, then there's something that's called a SWOT analysis, SWOT, which is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. This is a very interesting exercise. Talk about your strengths and your weaknesses from your perspective, but then look outside beyond you and say, are there opportunities out there that my competition is missing and I should follow? Are there threats out there that I need to be worried about? Now, the last part of the plan is the financials. I find that a lot of people have trouble with this, not so much because they can't think it through, but because they're not necessarily comfortable with Excel. And it's hard to plan your financials if you don't have a reasonable Excel understanding. When I work with my clients, I provide them an Excel template. It has the formulas already in there. They really just have to fill in the blanks, and it will generate the appropriate numbers. Notice that I talked about the narrative first. I think you do the narrative first and try to think of all those costs and expenses that you might have. You set those goals where you're trying to set up a target of how much money you're going to make in revenues each year over the next 3 years. You use that information to plug into the template. So it seems harder than it has to be. There are different types of financials you need to record. The first is if you're starting a business, how much do you have to spend before you even open the door? For growth, it's what is the additional cost that is a one-time expense to make this growth happen. We're looking for cash flow projections, 3 years, and then we would be looking for an existing business. Tell us about your last 3 years. We would want to see your P&L and your balance sheet. And a scorecard is really, it uses data from the P&L and the balance sheet to calculate ratios. You don't have to know the arithmetic to do it because there are formulas already in the template. Why would you do this? Because banks like to see it. So it would be nice if you were able to do it again if you were an existing business. If you're not an existing business, then you just go to the last bullet point and project your next 3 years, P&L, profit and loss, and your balance sheet. And again, the scorecard would be calculated automatically by what you put in to those 2 prior spreadsheets in the spreadsheet template. Okay, have I lost everybody?
Probably with the money talk.
This is always difficult, but I think it's, somebody said I was afraid to write a business plan. It's really scary, and I think it's scarier to run a business without a business plan, but, that's me. It would be nice to know where you're going. Then there's always the appendix, and you can put in anything in the appendix that you feel is relevant. Somebody mentioned that if you have pictures, photos about products that that you're going to be selling, or equipment that you have to purchase, or if you're a restaurant, pictures of the food, pictures of the menu, those would be great. You certainly would want to have your resume in there. Any other intermediate spreadsheets that you think are relevant. But see, if you put it in the body of the business plan, people won't read them, okay? So you just have them there for reference in the event they want to look at them. So I think that's pretty much it.
We do have a question that came up earlier, and it says, where would I find information on the industry trends and profitability for my business? And
okay.
In one of our earlier webinars, we had a whole list of resources. But if you have any off the top of your head, I'll try to add a couple of those links to our website. I'll find them and add them to the end panels.
I actually have access to some information that's proprietary, but if you become an SBDC client in the state of Illinois, we can help you get access to that data.
Oh,
so
cool.
One of the things that, we have a variety of databases that we can look into or call up and get information about. But if you were looking for what's the future of hairstyling organizations in the future, I'm sure I can find that on a database called IBIS World, I-B-I-S World. But I have access to it, but I can share information with you. There are Otherwise, I would go to your local library, go find the person in charge of the business research area and say, this is what I need help with. They should be able to put you in touch with information. You may not be able to check out the books, but they can tell you where you can get industry information. I also say that the internet is your best friend. Okay, there's a ton of stuff out there that is free that you can find out about.
All right, and one of our listeners said, I just recently bought into my company, joining my partner. He was originally an all-cash business doing residential work and kept poor financial information. If you are an existing business, is it absolutely necessary to have the past 2 years, or can we tell our story based off of current sales projection? We are definitely better positioned than an original startup.
Are we talking about, if you're talking about going to a bank and trying to get funding, typically banks will not lend to anyone unless they've been in business at least 2 years. That's a fact. Occasionally I will hear about a bank who's done that, but even other bankers said, I never heard of such a thing. So it's very unusual. So what are they looking for? They want to see your past. That's a really good reason to have a good understanding of financials. Okay.
All right, so what I have up on the screen right now is the template that Sybil has prepared, and it is in the file pod. So if you go to the file pod in the lower left-hand corner, you can download our presentation from today. You can also download the plan template instructions, the template that we're going to show you right now, and the template for the business, for the financials. And if you do click on them to download them, please come back to the webinar because that will open in a new window. But Sybil, do you want to explain this document? And I will scroll down a little bit so that you can describe it. And if you need to see this bigger, there is a little icon at the top of the screen where it says D screen. It's got 4 arrows pointing out. You can make that bigger if you need to see it bigger on your screen right now.
Okay, is this the template itself, Dee?
This is the template itself.
Okay, the template is really an outline, and it has all of the sections that I described in the presentation, and it has an area in which you would key in the appropriate information. And right above it, if you enlarge it, you would see that it is recommended that you supply information on this subject not to exceed some number of characters. That's how I'm trying to tell you, don't go into overload. Don't tell me more information than I need. Don't knock yourself out. So some areas might need 2,500 words or less. Other areas might only need 500 words or less.
Now, there is one section here that says use of prize money should you win. That was for the competition that you had at your SBDC.
Right. What you would have in here if you were requesting funds from a bank, instead of that, you would say loan request would be the title. Instead of use of prize money, it would say loan request. And in that paragraph, you would say, well, we need another $75,000 to grow the business, and it is our expectation that we will be able to provide $25,000 in funding ourselves, but we are looking to borrow $5,000 to buy equipment, and we're hoping that we can borrow it at particular percentage payable over a particular number of years. So you would probably call the bank in advance and ask them, what's the going interest rate for this type of loan, and how many, because you want to put the repayment of the loan as part of your projections. They're very interested in knowing, okay, so that's your cash flow. But if you include repayment of the loan that I'm going to give you, can you support it? Okay? So that's what you would do. And so we just list them all, and if you scroll way down to the bottom where the financials are, I have suggested that you actually copy and paste in a very special way from the financial template. Okay, so...
I'm trying to get there.
I know.
Without making everybody dizzy.
You're almost there. There we go, financial plan. Okay, so growth costs. There is a tab in the Excel spreadsheet to have you identify what you think your costs are going to be for this growth. These are not recurring or working capital costs. These are the one-time costs. You're purchasing new equipment. You're making changes to the layout, and therefore there's some carpentry that needs to be done, some painting that needs to be done, and so on. And notice it says copy and paste special bitmap. That is an excellent way that you can copy a spreadsheet, plunk it into a Word document, and it looks beautiful. If you don't use copy and paste special bitmap, it will look terrible and you'll want to kill yourself. So that's just my tip.
And she's suggesting it again with the cash flow projections and
Right.
all of the other
Right.
cash
It tells
flow
you
items.
all of the, right. And again, for the business plan contest, it assumed that you had to be in business at least 3 years. So I know that everybody who applied would have 3 years of prior experience.
So that's
okay, I have a question from Paris. If you're opening a business that would service people within the beauty industry, would LLC be best? The LLC versus an SCorp versus sole proprietor is not really industry specific. It's more about how you're going to operate the business, if you're going to have employees, if you're going to have investors, and things of that sort. So I cannot tell you if LLC would be good based upon the industry. We'd have to, and actually, I don't recommend what you should do. I advise you on here are your options, and then I make a recommendation that you see a professional, and it's typically an accountant, because I think most of the issues are related to the tax benefits of having certain types of business structure. However, if there's a partnership or there are multiple shareholders, you're going to need some kind of legal document that does address those issues.
And we did have an entire webinar on financial plans for part of your business plan, and that was the exact suggestion from the person giving the presentation. Our guest speaker on that presentation was to consult your accountant to make sure that you're getting the right entity set up for your business.
Where can you get a copy of my presentation? Well, Dee said you will be able to download it, right?
It is in the lower left-hand corner where it says Files. It is the PowerPoint presentation, and we are recording our session today, so we will put out a news article so that you can watch the entire presentation or skip through to the parts where you may have missed some of the goodies. And I would love to thank Sybil Egge for sharing her time and expertise on creating a business plan. This was a wealth of information, and it's just amazing that all of the services offered by the Small Business Development Center are free to you as a small business person. So if you don't happen to be in the Elgin Community College area, you are welcome to find a listing from our pod right here where you can go to look at the Illinois Small Business Development Centers and find a location close to you. So make sure that you click on these links and save them for future reference. We have our Illinois Virtual Job Club Network. We have all of our references for Start Your Business. We have a news article that we just put out that was employer and business startup resources with a list of all of our webinars that we've had and all of the presentations, all the actual PowerPoint presentations, and all of those other items, along with a link to Illinois WorkNet Start Your Business and the Illinois Small Business Development Centers link so that you can find the location close to you. Again, if you need the handouts, they are in the file pod, which is now in the top left-hand side of your screen. So you can click there and take a look. And please fill out the poll questions for us so that we know how we did today. We do have another question from Shell.
Yeah. I appreciate your problem. You have to, if the bank is resistant and does not want to lend money because you're a startup, then you're going to have to find a way to start it for a lower cost or try to raise money from friends and family, which, by the way, is a very common way to do it. I strongly recommend doing the business plan with the multi-year projection. It's not just to satisfy the bank, it's to satisfy you. It's so you understand what your costs are going to be and whether or not you're going to make money. Don't go into a business if you don't know whether you're going to make money and you're just crossing your fingers. You can't plan on luck.
In one of the presentations about funding your business, we did have a whole list of resources where you can start looking for money without having to go to the bank first. And in many cases, if you are, there's crowdfunding options, there's alternative lenders, there's a whole list of organizations that might be able to help you. And once you have some of those items in place, banks are more willing to talk to you because you do have some funding that doesn't necessarily come directly out of your pocket. So you might want to take a look at the other webinars that we've done. How can Lori become a member of the SBDC and get help with her business plan? Again, all you have to do, Lori, and I'll let Sybil answer this as well, is go to that link that's on that top right-hand pod and look for a small business development center near you. And then, Sybil, what does she do?
Call that number. Sometimes they'll suggest that you complete a request for counseling. It's a very short questionnaire. And then the site that's closest to you will receive that. And then we would follow up with a phone call and say, we received your request for counseling. How can we help you? And let's set up an appointment. We provide counseling services at absolutely no charge. This is standard throughout the SBDC, not just Illinois, but all over. So don't hesitate to find an SBDC near you and take advantage of these free services. They'll help you think through the business plan. I think if you had to do this all by yourself in isolation, you'd freak out. You don't have to do that. You don't have to do that. Go talk to somebody who really understands how to do business plans. They'll coach you through the process. They will find things about your business plan you never thought of, and you will thank them later.
Great. And we have another question from Shell. Do you recommend using a crowdsourcing process? You need to investigate it. That is one option. There is now a bill that just passed legislation in the spring session on intra-state crowdfunding. It is going through some growing pains with getting things all off the ground, but you do need to investigate it as an option. So, Sybil, did you want to say something about that?
She actually said Do you recommend using crowdsourcing? Crowdsourcing is different from crowdfunding.
Oh,
So,
sorry.
okay, crowdsourcing is where you would go out into the cyber sphere and say, I'd like some help, I'd like some advice, let me know. It's not a request for money. Crowdfunding is a request for money, and the way that we have done it until very recently is just to say, please help me raise $25,000, I'll give you a t-shirt, I'll give you a mug, I'll give you this, I'll give you that, okay? And the person who submits the donation to you never gets reimbursed. But what Dee is talking about is there is a new way that you can provide equity funding to small businesses in Illinois. It is a brand new thing where there's a maximum amount that you could donate, but you would become a shareholder, so to speak, in the business.
Great. Well, I don't see any other questions coming in right now, so I'm going to end our recording for the day. Again, thank you so very much to Sybil Egge of the Illinois Small Business Development Center at Elgin Community College for sharing her time and expertise with us, and we will look forward to sharing all of this information with you again. If you have any suggestions for other webinars after you have reviewed all of the webinars that we do have recorded on small business, you can submit a suggestion to the to Illinois WorkNet at info@illinoisworknet.com. That's info@illinoisworknet.com. And Lori's asking, where will the web links be after the presentation? We will include those in the slide share and in the article for you. Thank you very much for joining us all today.